Welcome to the Deconstructing Data podcast and live stream. I'm Jessie Lezak, fractional CMO at BDEX, along with BDEX's founder and CEO, David Finkelstein. Good to see you, David. Anything new?
You too, Jessie. Good to see you. Yeah, just staying busy. It's been another busy week. I can't believe we're midway through February already. And I think we're going to have a really interesting discussion today, digging deep into AI. So I'm looking forward to jump into it.
I agree. It's going to be a great one. So today on Deconstructing Data, we are thrilled to welcome Mike Finley. He is the CTO and co-founder of AnswerRocket. Welcome to the show, Michael.
Hey, Jessie. Hey, David. Yeah, thanks for the welcome. How are you?
Yeah, absolutely. We're doing great. We're excited to have you on the show today, and we'd love to have you sort of kick it off for us. And maybe you can give our viewers and listeners a little bit of background about who you are, where you come from, and what led you to become CTO and co-founder of AnswerRocket.
Right. Okay. So let's see. To keep it brief but interesting, I grew up in Spain. I actually lived there till I was 13. So came to the States for high school and college. Did physics in college, and that led me to computing right away. And so my career has really been on the computing side rather than in the physics side. Really dedicated. Everything I've done has been focused on enterprise value delivery. So enterprise software. First half of the career was building large scalable systems with, distributed parts and all the complications of fault tolerance and integrating lots of different devices. Truly, I would say the IT side of technology. And the second half of my career, the last 15 years or so, has been really wrapped around intelligence and artificial intelligence specifically. So there's a book written called On Intelligence by a guy named Jeff Hawkins. And in that book, it was basically a call to launch the AI movement. And so I heard that call, I answered it, went through a couple of different AI startups, 15 plus years ago that never reached commercial success. And then, and mostly because the technology wasn't ready. And then AnswerRocket, where I am now as CTO, is really kind of the converged at a time when the technology is ready, enterprises are ready, the value can be delivered. And so that's where I am today.
Great story. So you started out ahead of your time, for sure, right?
For sure, yeah. It's as bad to be too early as it is to be too late, right? That's one of those truths. And AI, it's definitely the case. I gave a presentation in 2008 of all things, basically comparing being able to see birds flying and then building 747s to being able to see people being intelligent and not being able to build that technology. And my point was, look, if it's possible for birds to fly, that's how we knew we could make jets. It's possible that stuff, wetware between our ears, can be intelligent. Why can't we make it so that electronics can do that too? Or why don't we just make wetware if that's what it takes? And so that vision, if you want to call it that, from all those years ago, is finally coming true now.
Interesting. So tell us a little bit more about AnswerRocket.
Yeah, so we started off, I mentioned that first half of my career, that was really building a business called Radiant Systems. We took it from, a tiny little startup to, a global public company, and ultimately sold it to its biggest competitor. And when we were running that business, we always had this challenge of interacting with our data, right? So we could solve all sorts of technical problems for our customers, but we couldn't tell you who our largest customer was. Certainly we couldn't say complicated things like, well, if we hadn't made that acquisition in Brazil, what would our organic growth have been? So all these sort of difficult things. And so we started AnswerRocket thinking that most businesses have that kind of a problem. And most businesses would love to have a conversation with their data. We invest a lot in data resources, trying to build a digital twin of our business online. Why can't we just talk to it and find out questions without having to get analysts involved for weeks at a time? So that's how we created AnswerRocket, really with that vision. And that's the journey that's led us where we are today, which is finally being able to provide not just that kind of chat interaction, which chat's is a part of a nutritious breakfast, as I like to say. It's a good way to start your GenAI journey, but chat is just the beginning, because eventually you don't want to continue those chats. You just want the machine to decide what to ask about and how to interact and take those actions for you. So that's where AnswerRocket is today, delivering that chat capability for businesses to be able to leverage all the data investment that they've been making for a number of years, but also beginning to automate the process of even looking at the data and taking actions without having to have humans involved in that process, which is really something fantastic and new in this agentic era of AI.
Yeah, I think that helps us sort of segue into our first topic of AI and agents.
Oh, yeah,
So
absolutely.
what can you tell us about this?
Yeah, about AI and agency. Well, so what's really interesting is we tend to look at the word agency or agent and say, oh well, it's something that has agency, meaning that it can make a choice, A or B. And you might say, well, look, if I can go to a chatbot and and say hello, it can decide whether it's going to say hello or hola back to me, right? So therefore, it's deciding. Therefore, it's an agent, and this is why you have a lot of things that are labeled as agents, even though they're really just chatbots, right? So I like to go a little bit beyond that, a little bit non-intuitive, because this is something that's bugging a lot of my customers right now, is understanding what exactly is agency and what isn't it. So the first part of agency for me is really wrapped around chain of thought or reasoning, meaning that the system, the AI, isn't just answering you right away; it's thinking about what it's doing, and this has even been built into some of the models now, like the the R1s and the O1s and so forth. All have built-in reasoning, so that's a huge improvement. We can still do chain of thought with older models, but the reasoning is getting built in now. Another important part of agency is tool use. So, I remember learning as a kid that humans were the only animals that use tools. And of course, that's been debunked all over the place now, but this is what we used to say. And so to me, agents have to use tools. And then the last thing that I think is really important in this broad definition of agents is that they leave something behind. They don't just produce an artifact and start over next time. Agents are AI systems that can actually do reusable units of work, whether that's a PowerPoint that can be rehydrated with another set of data, whether that's a set of instructions that can be used by another group of agents some other time. The last thing an enterprise wants is to make every decision every time, because that inconsistency leads to not really following your best practices. So agents in the enterprise, at least, have to be able to codify the work that they're doing, so they can use reasoning to explain it and then save that explanation and save their rules in a sequenced order so that they can be reused later on without reinventing the wheel every time. And they're leaving the opportunity for people to introduce corrections and best practices and making sure that the enterprise has a consistent result.
Yeah, I think that's one of the challenges that I've seen as far as when it comes to AI agents, is that a lot of the AI tools out there today are just that, they're tools, right? And so you have to sort of have a pre-definition of what you want the input and the output to be. Whereas, my thought process is with an agent is I'd like it to be able to sort of figure out what I need it to do without me having to structure the data ahead of time. And so that, I think that's one of the challenges, and I have yet to find a solution for this. But like if I upload a spreadsheet and I want it to run some sort of process on it and give me some output of some analysis of that data, if the document doesn't look exactly the same every time, it's going to break at some point. And my ultimate goal, I feel like, with an agent should be, like, it should be able to look at it and say, hey, this is not in the right format, or hey, there's something missing, and either correct it or come back to you and say, hey, I there's a problem here. I can't do the process I need to do. And most of the quote unquote tools that I found are just that. They're tools. They're not able to sort of do that level of analysis and figure out the problems before doing the task.
Yeah, exactly right. And if you think about it from a return on investment perspective, right, which is an important thing to bring in, because that's what enterprises do, is they bring return. You look at those tools, right? Maybe it's a creative tool for marketing. Maybe it's some of the tools that I use every day, AI in programming, AI in coding. they really are helping the human. They're making a human more productive, or they're taking burden off of the human, right? And that's one way of re-engineering around Gen AI, is to say, here's a new productivity tool that eats into what you used to have to do, that's kind of repetitive and rote, and instead lets you be more creative, like using your human powers. And that's a really good capability. But I would argue it's not very agentic, just as you're saying, David. It's not very agentic, because really, where is the agency of a tool that must always reply to you based on a command that you gave it, and it must always reply in the same way? What agency does it truly have?
Right.
On the flip side, some of these tools that get really the agent tools that get really interesting, they truly do take an open-ended kind of a mission, an open-ended kind of a goal. Like working with one of my customers, they think of the AI agents as what they would call a junior analyst, right? So they have big brands in big countries, and they're going to have humans looking after those. They're millions of dollars, and they're going to be very careful with them. But they also have small brands in small countries, and they just don't pay any attention to those day to day, but they'd like to. So is there a situation where we can watch what that senior analyst does in the big countries with the big brands, and then apply that as policy to what happens in the little countries with the small brands, right? That's what they're looking for. And so it's part of the advice that I give my customers all the time is, capture those evergreens. Capture the this situation happened, and this is what I wanted to do. And it could be, the joke is you can write it on a cocktail napkin and take a picture of it. I don't care what format you're capturing it in. It just has to be captured. The AI can listen to video, it can look at pictures, it can take PowerPoint. All those things are good inputs. And if you capture those scenarios, that's going to be evergreen no matter what model you're using, no matter what agency you've got in place. You're going to be able to say, my AI is smarter because it captured a smart thing that I know to do in my business. And the more of those you have, the smarter those agents are going to be.
Yeah, it's a good point. And it really comes down to the level of productivity that the agent can provide to you, right? Because ultimately that's the goal with AI, right? We're using it as a tool to increase productivity. The more it can do, and the more it can act like that junior analyst, the more productive it's going to be for you as a business. And that's the ultimate goal here, is like, I'm constantly looking, what tools can I use in AI that will, streamline the business, make us more productive, make processes more efficient. And can I do that without adding more people, right?
Right. Exactly. Yeah. It's fascinating. So many of my customers will talk about chat as though it's their AI strategy, right? And to me, that's just very unimaginative. And so it's not hard to believe, after going online to one of the websites and typing in a prompt and getting an answer back, it's not hard to believe that the AI is smart. And then you can see that, okay, if you put your documents into it, it'll say some interesting things about those documents, but ultimately, at the end of the day, if what it provides you is a wall of generic text, or a bunch of colorful visualizations that you could have made yourself, then how has that advanced your state, right? Now, maybe if you needed 1 million charts and you could only make 100, well, now great, you've got an advantage. You've made 1 million charts, but that's usually not the case, right? A great example of that same phenomenon is going on now in the market with this technology known as text to SQL. So the idea that you just type a question and out comes a SQL statement. Well, I have never met a business user who wants a SQL statement. They want the data from the SQL statement, and really they don't even want the data. They want the results analyzed from that data, and they want it done in a way that tells them something they didn't know, right? This is a very intuitive thing to say out loud, but we get stuck as IT providers. We get stuck in this mode of just going to the next thing that users want, and if they say that what they want is SQL, well, okay, we'll try to make SQL, but really they're just going to, as soon as they have SQL, they're going to want the data, and as soon as they have the data, they're going to want the conclusion. And of course, as you know, as soon as they have the conclusions, they're going to want the AI to go ahead and do those things, right? So you really can't get away from the idea of agency being introduced along that pathway somewhere. And the only question is, at what point does it come in, and is it able to accomplish truly needle moving things within your business because you've made it smart enough and empowered it with the right guardrails to keep it, to keep it between the lines so that you can let it loose and have it do that.
Such a
Yeah.
good point.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've kind of started to segue a little bit into the next topic in transforming processes, and so I'd love to share, especially in the enterprise. So I'd love for you to sort of share your thoughts on that.
Yeah, yeah. Absolutely. The thing that I observe a lot is that our customers never have enough analysts, right? It's like you never have enough programmers, you never have enough analysts, you probably never have enough nurses, right? There's certain job categories that just the value add from what they do is so high, but it's a somewhat rarefied skill set that you just never have enough of them. So what you find is that enterprises have sort of learned to live with this scarce resource, this scarce analyst resource. And now the possibility that AI comes in and actually makes that resource much less scarce, right? At least at that junior analyst level for now. That's really kind of it's kind of invigorating, right? In one sense, because it means that those analysts that are there, they're oversubscribed, right? They have more than enough to do, so they're going to be able to step what they do up and away from the day-to-day stuff, and the AI is going to be able to do the mundane things, letting the humans do the more strategic pieces, right? So many enterprises out there have used techniques like RAG, right? Retrieval augmented generation, or RAG, was that first sort of big unlock that enterprises got from GenAI technology, but with the advent of these deeper capabilities, these newer models, it's really opening up a pathway for these systems to do a whole lot more than they used to be able to do, even a year ago, and to make it possible to sort of fill all your open recs. In fact, if you look, there was a press release not too long ago by Salesforce.com where they basically said, "Yep, we don't need any more developers. We've got 30% improvement in the capabilities of our developers, and so we don't need to hire any more developers for a while." And that's the first time that that's happened in their history. I think we're going to continue to see that kind of pattern play out, where these aspects of the enterprise that have been starved because the resources simply weren't available, they're gonna be proliferating. There's an interesting paradox here that I subscribe to. I've seen it happen my whole career. The Jevons paradox, right? Jevons paradox says when something that was really precious and difficult becomes a lot easier to get, you need even more of it than ever. So in other words, it's not that as the AI makes the ability to do analysis faster and cheaper and easier, we're going to need more analysis than we ever needed before, because suddenly that barrier is gone and I can make much smarter decisions in a much broader part of my enterprise. And so this is what I call the workforce re-engineering, right? We're sort of turning the humans so that what they do is the kind of the higher end of the scale. The machines take over the lower end of the intellectual scale, and the resulting combination is a competitive edge for the enterprise.
Yeah, it's true, and I like that description in the workforce re-engineering, because a lot of people have been worried that AI is taking away jobs, but ultimately, to your point, it's re-engineering them. It's basically we're creating efficiencies, but at the same time, those efficiencies will enable new jobs, so different types of jobs, but new jobs to be created as well through those efficiencies.
Yeah, if you think about things like software as a category, right? We've truly been starved since the 1950s. There haven't been enough people that could write software, so the software that we have is probably buggier and is probably more expensive than it needs to be. Now, advance into an era of AI writing software where all of a sudden it's just a lot cheaper to get bespoke software built for you, and those developers are going to still be needed to do all sorts of things, but we're going to have a whole lot more software a whole lot cheaper. right? It's sort of like the phenomenon that we saw, when the App Store opened and suddenly anybody could become a software publisher. Suddenly there's millions of software companies all over the world, right? Well, the same thing happening now. Now, two people in a garage, proverbially, right, can create a piece of enterprise software that previously would have been years in the making, right? Or a video game that would have been years or at least months in the making. And now there's an opportunity with AI to sort of leverage up, get a whole lot more custom software, a whole lot more fit for purpose things that would never have been economically feasible before, can become very profitable now on a highly bespoke level. And so, ironically, getting away from artisanal code, right, from humans typing lines of code, is going to make it, machine generated, which means that there's access to a whole lot more goods than there used to be, which is exactly what we've seen happen in everything from steel to plastics to to cell phones and cars, right, over the years.
Yeah. There's an interesting challenge I've seen on LinkedIn, discussions gone on with how big of a company can you build on how few people, with AI. And I've seen some progress with, like, people saying, okay, well, we've gotten to 10 million in revenue with 10 people. If we can get to 10 million with 10 people, can we get to 100 million with 20 people? And and they're constantly sort of discussing, creating these challenges and how they can get there. So we're going to see a lot more efficiency built with AI for sure.
Absolutely. And go ahead.
No, I'm just agreeing and thinking, it's pretty interesting to think about how much you can do now with so few people and even developers. But go ahead, Michael.
Yeah, well, just the thought to interject there was around this notion of, the one person unicorn, right? That's something that's floated out there. Somebody, one person makes a company that's worth $1 billion. And while I respect and admire that possibility, I would also say that if it's that easy to do it, maybe that one person is Albert Einstein or something, but if it is possible for that one person to do it, then it's very likely that company will be created 100 times, not once. And that therefore, it won't be worth $1 billion. It'll be worth a lot less. It's kind of like that Einstein challenge where he said, look, if our brains were so simple that we could understand them, then we wouldn't be able to understand them, right? You get into that looping paradox. So if it's so easy to make $1 billion company, everybody can do it, then nobody's going to have $1 billion company because there's not enough billions to go around, right?
Right.
Definitely. Well, I mean, we could probably go on and on about this topic in terms of AI and enterprise and transforming processes, but anything else more you want to say on this, David?
In particular, I don't think so. I'd say that and maybe this is more of a question for us to discuss. I mean, what are the biggest challenges that you've seen so far with enterprises, entering this space and trying to transform processes? There's obviously challenges. There's challenges with, we've talked a lot about the garbage in, garbage out. So, the data that you're using and putting into your process, your AI, is going to, have a major effect on what the output is, right? We've seen that as being a big challenge for companies that are trying to transfer processes into AI. What have you seen?
Yeah, so it's another good direction to go here. One phenomenon that's out there is that we as IT professionals tend to think of IT deployments in the enterprise of AI being just like everything we've ever done before. It's just like changing databases or going to a new ERP or any other major transformation that we've had to go through, any migration, right, that we've had to implement. And the fact is, it's fundamentally different, right? So I had a customer a couple of days ago say, look, I've spent some time learning all this AI stuff. I even did some coding on the side. What my business needs to do is spend 2 years getting all our microservices lined up, and then we'll be able to hook AI into them. And then 2 years are going to go by, and your biggest competitor is going to shadow you, and you're going to be out of business potentially.
It's a long time in this space.
It's way too long, right? In fact, there's an adage that's been developed by now, which is that AI can solve AI problems. Meaning that if you think you can't bring AI in because of data, then you probably can use the AI to fix the data, right? If you think that you can't bring AI in because of scale, then you could probably use AI to fix the scale. There's simply no aspect of the work that can't be touched with AI, right? So, if the way that I talk to my kids and young people about it is, look, if part of your job is touching the real world, like, you're a gardener or you're a surgeon, right? You're a therapist, right? Touching the real world, then that's going to be a human thing for a good long while, right? But if there isn't a real world part of that, if it's all data, if it's email inboxes and spreadsheets and ERP systems, and the output that you do is creating more of those data entry records and keystrokes and mouse moves, right? If it's electronic on both sides, odds are that process can be re-engineered to be mostly AI driven. And you may still need humans to authorize, right? To approve conclusions, to teach new things, to apply new strategies, right? To observe things in the real world that the models can't, right? But you're going to be able to move a lot of those workflows over. And the important thing is to start small and look for ROI. Just do it like an entrepreneur within your IT organization. Find something small that's a thorn in everybody's side that nobody likes. Maybe it's some ETL job pulling data in, right? Maybe it's some very specific back office process where you hate doing it, your customers hate the job you do, and the CFO thinks it's too expensive. Find those spherical problems, right? They're a problem from every angle. Find one of those, do an AI skunkworks project around it, get it to where it's doing something that's not being done, that's adding value in the enterprise, and then let that snowball, let it build up as you build your expertise. And as that problem gets solved, you can take it to more and more and more use cases. And in fact, a lot of what we do day to day is we've developed this sort of 9-bullet playbook of all the things that are broken in enterprise workflows, everything from hallucinating to trouble connecting to real world data to not even having a good way of identifying the right use cases for AI. And so we've got these bullets, and that's what we take into our customers to say, all right, we think you have some AI challenges. We do too. We're learning them all the time. But here's a pretty good playbook of the things that we think you can do to bring this stuff online and start delivering value. And that's something that really resonates with a lot of the folks that I talk to.
A great point. And I liked your added adage about let AI solve AI problems. And it just makes me think, wow, we're keeping those robots employed, aren't we? But you do still need a human. And speaking of humans, we did get some human comments here from Layla. This is super insightful. I have a question. How do you make sure AI adoption aligns with business goals and existing workflows?
I love this question, actually, Layla. It reminds me, so it brings me back to the author Jim Collins had this term, the BHAG, the big, hairy, audacious goal. What are your biggest goals in your business? So that's the way I would look at it, is sort of working backwards. First, determine what is your biggest goal in your business and what is most important for you to get there, and take it one step at a time. We've said this before about AI, like you can't, and what Mike, what you just said, like you can't have a 2-year plan and say we're going to do all of this over the next 2 years, because 2 years is like a lifetime in AI, right? Everything's going to be different in 2 years. But what is the one most important goal for your business? And then align with that goal. Figure out how can you, if your biggest goal is to get to a certain number of leads that you want to generate per month, whatever it is, then say, okay, like if we need to get and grow that amount of leads that we're getting per month, then what is the one thing that we can do to improve the number of leads that we get each month? And then if there's an AI tool or agent or something that you can implement that will help you improve on that goal, then you're winning. And so, it's really about taking it backwards from your biggest goals. Once you've done that to your biggest goal, then you can add on to other things, and you can say, okay, well, our next goal is to make sure that our customer service is, always excellent. okay, what can we do to improve our customer service? Our next goal is to make sure our invoicing is spot on 100%. You can go through a lot of other things after that, but always look at sort of your biggest goal first and what one thing you can do to improve that goal.
I love that.
Yeah, same here. It's it's sage advice. And the fact is, this is the reason why I advise my customers not to think of chat as a strategy, right? The chat box where I can ask anything and it'll tell me anything, has no ROI, right? It has no way of being measured. It's not part of any one of those enterprise goals. And so then you might say, yes, but it's part of all of those goals. But then to the caller's question, it's not part of any workflow, so it's never going to get used, right? So when I think of the two parts of this question, how do we align it to to your goals, and how do you make sure it works with your workflows? The goals part is pretty straightforward. You have to tell it. You just have to tell it. You have to tell it in every prompt that you provide it. Hey, we are trying to retain market, or hey, we are trying to grow market share. We are trying to satisfy customers. The goal of this conversation is to reduce cost, right? You have to tell it what those goals are, and good news, you tell it in natural language most of the time, right? And so that's always got to figure into it, into the conversation. And then on the workflows front, fit it into the workflow. Let it be part of the Slack conversation. Let it be part of the workflow that goes from, let's decide on a price change until it's implemented across the board, right? Put the AI in there at the stages that make it make sense. Tell it the goal of that stage. Hey, your job is to look at this incoming data and make sure it's clean before it goes out. And clean means there's no missing time periods. There's no things that should add up that don't, right? You give it the rules, you give it the objectives, you slip it into those workflows where it's supposed to be, and voila, you're delivering value.
Yeah.
That's right.
And
Absolutely.
she followed up with another question as we were talking. So she says, so how do you measure the ROI of AI-driven process? You want to take that one, Michael?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's really straightforward. You start off with a measurement before the AI is involved, saying, all right, whatever the process is, how much is it costing me to do that, right? And then you spend some money on AI, whether that's people implementing it, services, the AI tokens themselves, which are incredibly valuable. Like a 1 cent token can be worth $1 billion when you put it in your business. So you take all those real costs. And you say, okay, now in the after picture, how much did it cost to do the thing I was trying to do? And is the investment worth the juice that you got out of it? Right? It's no different than buying a new piece of equipment for a factory, or any other investment that you might make. You treat it very much like that, and it will be successful. Now, if a business is AI first, meaning AI is in everything, and nothing ever existed without AI, which is a lot of these 1-person, 2-person, 10-person companies, it's hard to say what's AI worth from an ROI perspective there, because it's like, what's the ROI of your mother? You have to have one. So I can't really tell you the value of her, right?
Mhm.
But if you're coming from the other way, if you have a profitable business and you're applying AI to it, you can very much put gauges around all the changes you make. How much did it cost to make it, and what's the result from that? Measure ROI like any other technique.
What would you add to that, David?
Yeah, no, I think that was really well said. I think I'll sort of revert back to my example and just say, look, if you're trying to increase leads, which is sort of the example I gave, if that's your big, hairy, audacious goal, that's your biggest goal. We need to increase the number of leads. Well, look at what your cost is today to and just like Michael said, like you're measuring your ROI beforehand, and measure it after. Now that you've implemented an improved workflow with AI, what's happening? Are you increasing your leads? Is increasing those leads, has that also driven more revenue? What's the new ROI? Pretty simple, straightforward.
Right.
So I think it's Michael said it perfectly.
Definitely. So on that note, I guess we can probably transition into our third topic, which is GenAI roadmap and how to prepare. You want to kick us off, Michael?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is a fascinating area, right? Because it's moving so fast. on an exponential curve, basically, is where we are. And I like to say, look, if you're not learning, you're losing, right? And that's a harsh way of saying it, but we tend to remember stuff like that. So if you're not paying attention to the new stuff and learning those techniques, you're losing. So what are the new things that you should be learning now? Because if you don't, you're going to be losing, right? A couple of things there. One is edge models. So edge models basically meaning that we've gotten accustomed to these large models being in the cloud, and you hit them with an API, and you pay for the tokens. Edge models are in your device, or they're on your server farm. They're basically like any other IT asset. And there's some really, really powerful ones, R1 being the example, but there are many others that you can deploy locally in your own infrastructure. So they're not cloud anymore. And not only are the models getting smarter at smaller sizes, right? And again, remember that existence proof. Right here between my ears, I can do some smart things. Why does it need a cloud full of stuff? Like it looks like a 1950s computer, is what's out there in the OpenAI cloud. Why does it have to be that big, right? It can be a lot smaller. So with fewer parameters, meaning fewer numbers, and with smaller numbers, right? Then this is really where it gets fascinating. There are these what's called 1.58 bit models, and these 1.58 bit models don't use floating point numbers anymore. They don't use multiplication of big long decimal numbers. They just do addition, and they do it on ones and zeros, right? Ones and zeros and minus ones, as it turns out. The minus one ends up being important. So these edge models can be really smart, really small, really cheap to run down in your laptop, in your cell phone, on your tablet, in your data center, and being able to apply those is a really key aspect of the roadmap. And then at the other extreme, there will be larger models, and they will be superhuman in intelligence, and we can't even comprehend what that looks like, because it's superhuman. If we could comprehend it, then we wouldn't be able to, right? You get in that paradox again. So it's really living at those two ends of this. It's pretty. That's the things to prepare for. There's one kind of a hint on that superhuman side of things, which is based on the pattern that we've seen so far, right? So like the GPT-2 models couldn't really play a role. Like they wouldn't act like a pirate. If you talk to them, they would just answer back like they would. But then suddenly GPT-3 would. It would act like whatever role you wanted it to play, it would role play that back to you. But the GPT-3 wouldn't really deceive you if it thought that was a good goal, right? It was not able to do that. Don't quote me on these exact facts, but this is the kind of thing. But suddenly GPT-4 is able to be deceitful if it helps it meet the goal that it has, right? So these breakthrough abilities, there's a guy named Dario Amodei at Anthropic, the founder of Anthropic, along with his sister, and he likes to say that, look, the error loss, meaning how accurate these models are, is getting better and better over time in a very linear way. Models keep getting better kind of in a linear way. But their abilities arrive in step changes, right? And this is what he's talking about, this ability to play roles, this ability to deceive, obviously not being a great one, the ability to perform reason, right? That we've just seen some breakthroughs there. So expect these superhuman models to have step change type updates to their capabilities. And when those arrive, even if we don't understand them, we need to learn how to use them. We need to be ready to take them on and adopt them into our business very quickly, because that's going to be the heart of remaining competitive in that time frame.
Yeah, it's true. It's a good point. And it's the only way to prepare is just to keep learning. There's just a constant, new information. There's constant new technology comes out by the hour. I don't even want to say by the day. It's literally by the hour. So it's like you need to constantly learn. And so, that's your best chance in being prepared for what's coming, which is constant change, right? And that's the one thing we can guarantee. It's going to be constant change, and there'll be constant advancement. And the only way to keep up with it is just to keep learning.
Yeah, and there's a fascinating aspect that I find really cool, and it is that the models are able to find patterns that we can't, right? So famously, some of the early chess machines, were described by Kasparov as being brutal, right? Their techniques were brutal. It's just a machine doing if then else kind of statements and multiplications, but somehow it was being brutal. And so they do develop new patterns, and these patterns have an aspect to us as humans, as mammals more specifically because of our neocortex, but as humans, these patterns are recognizable to us maybe even before they're recognizable to the model. And so what I mean by that is, you might feed 10,000 examples to a model, and it might learn something from them, and it might begin to apply that, but it doesn't know exactly why. It just knows that all of its little neurons connect in all these little ways, and it has a certain result. We as humans can look at one example of how it made a decision and generalize that much faster than the language models can. So there's a new age of people, not just the ones that are kind of switched on and learning a lot and using the technology to do their jobs well, but they're actually learning from the technology, right? So a couple of days ago, I learned something. I've been coding in Python for as long as Python's been around, and I learned something from a model the other day about the language itself, right? So and I actually had to go Google it to see if it was true, and of course it was, because the model learned it from the internet, right? So so there's definitely the opportunity for us as humans interacting with these machines, especially the agents and the reasoning level models, watching what they do and using it better than they do, learning the techniques that they've got and applying those better than even the models do themselves. To me, this is going to be a fascinating area. It's going to be a 10x productivity area where some people are going to be stunning in their capabilities because they learned to do this, and others that are recalcitrant, that sort of fight the trends, that want to stay in this artisanal mode, handcrafting everything that they do, they're going to be left behind, and it's going to be a challenge to keep up after that.
It's funny to think of it as an artisanal mode, but yeah, it really is these days. We did have another question roll in, also from Layla. I have another question. What are some of the risks of rolling out Gen AI, and how do you mitigate them?
Yeah,
go for it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, of course, there's always risks associated with things like hallucination. Anytime an AI model is used, you can have biases introduced, right? So these are very human, very social kinds of problems. And look, these machines, as Jeff Hinton, the godfather of AI that just got the Nobel Prize, as he likes to say, they are alien intelligence. They are not human. They're not, of the same kind of intelligence we are. So they're going to do things that are harsh, right? It's, we don't have electricity, laying around on bare wires in our homes because it's dangerous. We put it in sockets in the wall with special ways of accepting it. We don't reject it because we fear it, but we take really good care. And the same thing has to happen for AI. We have to put the guardrails on what we allow it to do. We have to put the guardrails on what it says back to humans. And, in that category of using AI to solve AI problems, a lot of times a supervisory model is what's going to help you solve the problems that an underling model is creating, right? So before you publish something on the internet, run it through a reflection that allows a smarter model to look at the work of the models that have done that work previously, right? This is another leading area for Anthropic. They always have a smarter model that is not published, that is the one that it allows them to release a dumber model, for lack of a better word, that the smarter model has judged ready for the world, right? And that allows them to automate the process of stress testing the models so that they're not biased, so that they're not malicious, so that they're not applying they're applying all the correct guardrails that are intended for their use.
That's awesome. That's a great example.
Guardrails. Yeah, we've definitely talked about guardrails here before. Another great question, Layla. But back to the topic. So Gen AI roadmap and how to prepare. David, what would be your take on this? What do you think people need to prepare for?
Like I said, I think the constant learning. I mean, geez, sometimes I even go into like Claude because that's my favorite one. But I'll just go into Claude and just ask it, a question about something I want to learn about, whatever it is, even if it's about AI, you can ask it. And it's funny, I did an experiment once with Claude and I just said, tell me something interesting. And it came back with something, Like it picks something at random, and it taught me about how your brain processes information while it sleeps. And I was just like, oh, okay, that's kind of cool. But that's my point. My point is, like, you have to be constantly learning, and even if you're using AI to learn, it doesn't really matter. That's the only way we can prepare for all the changes that are coming.
So right.
Yeah. Have to keep up with it. Oh, okay. Well, we've got tech stack and it's 5 o'clock. Sorry, time got past us, but we need to know, Michael, what are some of your favorite tools in your tech stack?
All right. So look, I've got to throw a big shout out to Cursor. Cursor is now my go-to editor. It's whenever if I'm trying to code without Cursor, it just feels like I'm in the Stone Age. It's so much faster, so much more productive. So I love that. I also, growing up in Spain, you talk with your hands, and I can't really give a presentation without a whiteboard or something to write on. So Whimsical, is a favorite for me. It's it comes up on most phone calls. I'm going to share it. I'm going to share my screen. If I can't do that, I'm just going to, I have to at least bring up a scratch pad where we can take some notes and, kind of keep the action items flowing. So, beyond that, there's obviously there's a lot of different tools that we use every day. Frankly, if I compare now to the beginning of my career, it's clear that Git is stunning for everything it does. The obviously keeping track of so many different people working on so many different things, and the way that it can merge code together, and that's miraculous. So it's another tool that I love, and yeah, that's probably my top ones. I tend to be honestly more of a Stone Knives and Bearskins guy. I think some of my team would even complain that I don't move fast enough to new tools. But man, when Cursor came out, it was all over. I never went back within minutes of trying that out. So that's where I'm at.
Nice.
Well,
Well,
I've heard a lot of people talk about Cursor. I don't code anymore, but that's from what I've heard, it's everybody's using it now.
Yeah, well, and Claude's great for code too, by the way. Just jump in and say, hey, write me code to do this. Sorry, Jesse, I cut you off.
No, it's okay. I was trying to tag Cursor in, and there were 3 different ones named Cursor that popped up. One of them said it was acquired by Data Robot. Have you heard?
Yeah, no, I don't think that's the one, but
maybe I tagged the wrong one. Yeah, we'll have to go in if you're watching and you're curious. It's the one.
It's just cursor.com. Yeah.
Cursor.com.
Cursor.com. Yeah.
And Whimsical. Okay, great. Well, in closing, Michael, would you like to let listeners know how they could find you if they wanted to reach out after the show?
Sure. Super easy. I'm just Mike at AnswerRocket.com. Reach out, let me know how I can help. I'd love to talk about this stuff, especially the enterprise challenges tackling, and look forward to engaging with you.
Awesome, Michael. This has been a great conversation. Really appreciate you joining us here today. And thanks again. And we'll have Jesse close us out.
And I will do just that. I'm going to pull up our QR code and invite you, if you're watching, to go ahead and scan it. And we want to invite you to get powered by BDEX. So build authentic connections with your audience and drive unprecedented engagement. So just imagine harnessing the power of AI. We've been talking about AI, but to craft your audiences. And if you're in marketing, you know that product market fit is often one of the biggest challenges. So use AI and BDEX to help you craft your audiences that truly resonate with your brand, and ensuring that your marketing is hitting the mark every time. So we want to bring you closer to your marketing goals, and we're eager to guide you. Just simply scan that QR code or go to bdex.com and click on Talk to an Expert, and our team will help you through it. So for those of you who are curious, Deconstructing Data is booking up pretty fast. Right now, we are booking for July through December, and it is going pretty fast, like I said. So if you or anyone you know would like to be on the show in 2025, go ahead and email us at info@bdex.com and share your qualitative data with us so we can make this show better for you. And thanks again to Michael for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Of course.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.